There have been many great people in our history, but there is one that is very different from all the others. What if your world was silent? What if your world was dark? Would you give up? The woman who would change the way we looked at disabled people was born June 27, 1880, in Tuscumbia, Alabama.
When Helen Keller was a baby, she got very sick. She had a bad fever. It eventually caused her to go blind and deaf.
But Helen Keller was eager to learn, which often caused her to have tantrums. Her parents felt sorry for her and spoiled her. But it just made things worse. Who knew that the spoiled child who stole things from people's plates would one day change millions of people's lives?
Kate Keller had a teacher for Helen named Anne Sullivan. She was 20 years old.
Anne Sullivan worked with Helen Keller every day trying to get her to understand. She would fingerspell into Helen's hand.
The first word she taught her was doll.
It wasn't too long before Helen finally understood that everything had a name, and it meant something. One day, when Anne Sullivan and Helen were out by the pump, in one hand Helen was filling the water, and in the other, Anne was signing. W-A-T-E-R. Anne Sullivan worked with her so she could have conversations. Then she taught her how to read Braille. Helen read Braille so much, her fingertips would bleed. Helen did not only learn to read Braille in English, but French, Greek, German, and Latin. She also taught her how to write. Then Helen wanted to learn how to speak, so Anne Sullivan got her the best teacher she could, Sarah Fuller. Helen had only had 11 lessons when she learned how to speak her first sentence, "It is too warm." Then she also learned how to read people's lips. Helen could easily distinguish people by their smell.
Even when Helen Keller was a little girl, she said, "I will go to college," and she did.
In fact, Helen Keller went to Radcliffe College. Then Helen Keller graduated in 1904. Helen Keller was the first deaf and blind person to graduate from college with a Bachelor of Arts degree.
While Helen was in college, she wrote an autobiography called The Story of My Life.
Helen Keller and Anne Sullivan toured the world making speeches and giving hope to the impaired. Helen visited 39 countries around the world during her lifetime. Before Helen Keller, people with disabilities were treated harshly. But thanks to the great example of Helen Keller, handicapped people are no longer underestimated. Helen Keller inspired millions of people worldwide just by overcoming her own challenges. While Anne was touring the world, making speeches, her health was bad. Anne Sullivan died in 1936. Helen had lost Anne Sullivan, who she called teacher. In 1961, Helen Keller had a series of strokes, which caused her to retire from public life. June 1st, 1968, Helen Keller peacefully died in her sleep. But her story lives on and continues to change people's lives. There have been many movies of the miracle worker. And there is also the play The Miracle Worker by William Gibson. People from around the world come and watch the play each year. In fact, they perform the play right behind Helen Keller's house. People tour her birthplace every day. And they get to see where it all happened. There are many books about Helen Keller.
Helen Keller also popularized the Braille system.
Another great thing that Helen Keller did was inspire the Lions Club. So now the Lions Club goes around the world and helps the visual impaired by giving them glasses.
I'm a member of the Lions Club, which is an international service organization that does lots of charity work for people who are blind or deaf or have low vision problems. They were inspired by a speech that Helen Keller gave in 1925 to begin working to prevent new cases of blindness and treat blindness worldwide. None of this would have been possible without a speech that Helen Keller gave in 1925 that inspired the Lions Club. She asked them to be her knights for the blind in the crusade against darkness. And she really inspired them, and she's recognized worldwide for that, and her name is known by Lions all around the world for that one speech. And that one speech has helped millions of people worldwide.
The Lions Club has changed millions of people's lives, and it is all because of Helen Keller.
Helen Keller has inspired many people, and she has proved that handicapped people can do just as much as any other. Helen Keller has not just inspired handicapped people, but she has inspired other people as well. Helen Keller did the impossible.